My husband, Mark, told me he wanted a divorce on the same afternoon he won $8 million in the lottery. Of course, I didn't know about the money just then. All I knew was the sudden, cold finality in his voice as he stood in the middle of our living room, looking at me like I was a piece of furniture he was finally getting rid of. Without a moment of hesitation, I told him I would pack my things and leave. I think he expected a fight, tears, or screaming, but all I felt was a quiet, urgent need to get away. A deep, instinctual knowledge was stirring inside me, a memory of something that hadn't happened yet. I knew that the world as we knew it was about to end. A catastrophic blizzard was coming, a storm that would bury the entire city in an unforgiving blanket of ice and snow. Later, after I'd escaped to the safety of my family's house in the countryside, I was sitting down to a warm meal when I saw a video online. It was a video of Mark and my best friend, Jessica, in their kitchen. They were cooking, and what was in the pot was their own small child. The sight of it brought a tidal wave of memories crashing down on me, memories from a life I had already lived once before. It brought me back to the moment those same two people had held me down, carved me up, and eaten me to survive. This time, I thought, with a coldness that settled deep in my bones, I wouldn't be there to be their source of food. I was curious to see how they would manage to survive until the end on their own. I had been reborn. The day it all started again was September 12th, 2025. When Mark stood in the living room shouting about a divorce, I managed to push down the overwhelming hatred that threatened to choke me and simply agreed. My calm acceptance threw him off completely. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. "You really agree to a divorce?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "You're not planning something, are you?" I glanced at the clock on the wall. There were only 15 days until the disaster began. I didn't have the time or the energy to waste on a protracted argument with him. My priority was survival. "I do," I said, my voice even. "Let's get it over with right now. I can go to the courthouse this afternoon, but on one condition. I'm taking all the cash we have in our joint savings account." As we drove to the city courthouse, the man sitting behind the wheel couldn't keep the smug, triumphant look from his face. He thought he was getting away with everything. I had to clench my fists in my lap to stop myself from reaching over and ending him right there. The phantom feeling of a kitchen knife slicing across my throat, a memory from my previous life, flashed through my mind. A flicker of pure malice must have shone in my eyes, but it was gone in an instant. "Mark, Jessica, I swore to myself, you will pay in blood for what you did to me." Because of the state's mandatory 30-day cooling-off period for divorces, all we could accomplish at the courthouse that day was filing the initial paperwork and officially dividing our shared assets. We would have to return in a month to receive the final divorce decree. On the way out of the building, Mark tried to sound generous. "See how good I am to you?" he said, gesturing magnanimously. "I let you have all the liquid assets. I'm walking away with nothing." I couldn't stop a sneer from forming on my lips. "You were the one who had an affair. You were sleeping with my best friend, Jessica, behind my back, and you even had a child with her. You have some nerve to act like you're doing me a favor." "Besides," I added, "I left you the house, didn't I? All I took was the $250,000 in savings and the old pickup truck. You got off easy, so don't pretend you're some kind of saint." "Well, I don't mind you having the house. We were married after all," he said, the picture of false generosity. He wasn't just pretending. I knew, with the certainty of my past life, that he truly believed he was being charitable. He thought I was oblivious to his lottery win. After taxes, he still had over $8 million waiting for him. He was desperate to get rid of me so he could keep it all for himself. In my previous life, I had been completely clueless. I had fought to save our marriage, begging him to reconsider. It wasn't until he moved Jessica and their child into our home that I finally understood the depth of his betrayal. What made it even worse was the realization that they had been together long before Mark and I even got married. Their child was born during the time we were husband and wife. For years, I had felt sorry for Jessica, thinking how difficult it must be for her to raise a child as a single mother. I would even bring Mark over to her apartment to help with repairs and heavy lifting. I never imagined that all along I was the fool in their twisted circus. When the great blizzard hit, the three of them were trapped in the house with me. After we had eaten the last of the food, they turned on me. One night, while I was asleep, one of them held me down while the other slit my throat with a blade from the kitchen. They drank my blood and ate my flesh. It was a brutal, horrifying end. I didn't die immediately. My consciousness lingered, fading slowly, forced to witness the monstrous things they were doing to my body. "This blood tastes so metallic," I heard Jessica say. "Can you really drink it?" "Of course," Mark replied. "What else is there to drink? And look at this meat. It's so tender. It's a good thing I kept her well fed all these years so she could finally repay us, right? We still have cooking gas, so let's get a pot on the stove." Hearing those soulless, pragmatic words was the last thing I experienced before my life finally ended. So, how could I not hate them? "I don't want the house," I told him plainly as we stood on the courthouse steps. In a world that was about to be buried in snow, a house that wasn't properly reinforced was a death trap. Besides, the house Mark and I shared was a cheaply built tract home, plagued with shoddy construction that made it barely comfortable under normal circumstances, let alone during an apocalypse. If anyone with malicious intent came by, it offered virtually no protection. Since I had died there in my last life, I decided that this time that house would become Mark and Jessica's tomb. After we parted ways at the courthouse, I drove the pickup truck back to the house and immediately started packing. The best thing about a pickup is its large cargo bed. If I was leaving, I wasn't going to leave a single useful thing behind for them. All the items I had brought into the marriage, the thick down comforters, the lighter blankets, the handmade quilts from my grandmother, all of it came with me. I packed all of my clothes for all 4 seasons, and I made sure to take every single piece of Mark's winter clothing as well. From the kitchen, I took all my favorite things: the boxes of instant noodles, the variety packs of ramen, every spice, and every utensil I cherished. I packed it all, leaving nothing but bare cupboards behind. After I had practically gutted the entire house, I found a few discreet corners and installed several small hidden cameras I had purchased online. Then, I made my clean getaway. As I was starting the truck's engine, I saw Mark's car pull up. He was with Jessica and their child. They didn't stay long, just running inside to grab a few changes of light clothing before leaving again. So they didn't even notice that the inside of the house had been stripped bare. In my previous life, on this very same day, Mark had gone straight from the courthouse to claim his lottery prize. He had then booked international plane tickets on the spot and taken his new family on a lavish vacation. The 3 of them were gone for 15 days. By the time they returned, the catastrophic freeze had just begun to set in. Last time, Mark had tricked me into picking them up from the airport. On the drive back, as the temperature plummeted, he didn't care that I was driving in the freezing conditions. He roughly ripped my heavy winter coat right off my body and put it on Jessica. His violent movement nearly caused me to lose control of the truck and crash. Instead of blaming himself, he put all the blame on me, forced me to pull over to the side of the road, and beat me senseless. Even their child, a boy I had always treated with kindness, as if he were my own, took the opportunity to walk up and slap me across the face. So no, I wasn't being cruel now. They were simply going to reap what they had sown. I got into the pickup and drove through the evening, heading back to my parents' house in the countryside. It wasn't a very long drive, less than an hour on the highway. The moment I saw my mom and dad standing on the porch, tears started streaming down my face. In my last life, after the freeze hit, all the communication lines went down. With no water, power, or internet, I was never able to contact my aging parents before I died. I had no idea if they had managed to survive that long, terrible winter. And if they did, I couldn't imagine how they would have handled the news of their daughter's brutal death. But it was all right now. I was back, and I wouldn't let any of that happen again. Seeing me cry, my parents panicked, rushing over and asking me what was wrong. After some hesitation, I decided to tell them everything: the coming disaster, my rebirth, and how I had been murdered. My mom stood at the door, tears rolling down her face as she quietly cursed Mark's entire family. My dad was so furious, he went to the woodshed and grabbed an axe, ready to drive back to the city and chop that bastard into pieces. "That son of a bitch," he seethed. "That Mark is a real piece of work. How could they do that to you? If they were together before you even got married, why didn't they just stay together? Why did they have to be so damn sneaky and cruel about it? I managed a small, watery smile. Some people just can't stand to live in the light. They prefer doing things in the shadows. But the focus now isn't on them. It's about reinforcing this house and stocking up on as many supplies as we can to make sure our family is safe when the storm hits. My dad put down the axe, and my mom wiped her tears with the back of her hand. They were silent for a moment, processing everything I had told them. Then my mom spoke up. The house doesn't really need much work. It's newly built. You know how I love scrolling through those short videos online? Lately, it's been all about doomsday prepping and surviving disasters. So, when we built the house, I convinced your father to spend a little extra on things like bulletproof glass and reinforced security bars on all the windows. My dad added, "The front gate is a double-layer steel security door. Even a SWAT team would have a hard time getting through it quickly. And your mom even had me run an electric current through the perimeter fence." My mom laughed a little. "When I wanted to do all this, your dad said I was wasting money. Well, look at us now." "Honey, that's not all," my dad said, a proud look on his face. "We also built a secret basement. Didn't tell a single person in the village. It's completely empty right now, though." I was stunned and thrilled to hear my parents' incredible foresight. "Mom, Dad, this is amazing." Then a thought struck me, and I asked hesitantly, "But do you guys really believe me? About everything? Maybe it was just a terrible nightmare. What if this is all for nothing and none of it actually happens?" My dad waved his hand dismissively. "If nothing happens, then that's a good thing. And all this stuff you're talking about buying, it won't go to waste. Your mom has always wanted to have a huge stockpile of supplies just in case. If we actually get to use it all, it'll be her dream come true." As my dad sighed in resignation, my mom and I excitedly started drafting a supplies list. Our house was situated right in the middle of the village. Although most of our neighbors had built new homes in recent years, none were as solidly constructed as ours. It was a 3-story house with a large yard. One side of the yard was a paved area for parking, and the other was a small vegetable patch where we grew the fresh greens we ate regularly. Fortunately, the village was mostly empty. Aside from a few elderly folks who refused to leave their ancestral homes, my mom used to say you couldn't even find enough people for a game of mahjong. So, within our own village, we were relatively safe. Once the disaster hits and the heavy snow blocks all the roads, our remote location would make it difficult for people from other villages to get to us. Coming back here was definitely the right choice. Using checklists we found online from survivalist blogs, we finished our supply plan in no time. But then my parents looked at me, a little embarrassed. "Honey, because the house is so new, and we spent so much on fortifying it, we don't have a lot of cash on hand right now." My mom fiddled with her phone for a moment, and then I received a notification for a bank transfer of $130,000 from her. "Mom, that's too much," I said. "I have the $250,000 from the divorce, and I've got a little under $100,000 in my own personal savings. Altogether, that's almost $500,000. I tried to reassure them. "We're facing a natural disaster, not a zombie apocalypse. It will end eventually, a year, maybe 2 years. No matter how long it takes, I believe the country won't abandon its citizens. Once they get through the initial chaos, they'll start organizing rescue operations. All we have to do is survive the first and most difficult phase, and we'll be okay." Hearing that, my parents finally seemed to relax a little. My hometown is in a small county called Newtown, located right next to the much larger metropolis of Metro City. Newtown had all the basic stores, and buying a few extra things wouldn't raise any eyebrows, but trying to buy everything we needed in bulk would definitely be a problem. When it came to the logistics of buying supplies, my dad immediately laid out a clear plan. Heating equipment, generators, things like that don't break easily, and we don't need a huge quantity, so we can buy all of that here in town, but for the food, we should go to Metro City. $500,000 might not seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it can buy a mountain of supplies. If we buy too much here in Newtown, we'll attract unwanted attention. I had the same idea. I was planning on going to Metro City anyway. They'll have a much better selection. Plus, I'm going to rent a small warehouse on the highway between the two cities. We can have everything delivered there first, and then I can bring it back to the house bit by bit during the night. That way, no one in the village will notice how much we're stockpiling. My parents agreed with my cautious approach. Exactly, my mom said. Most of the people in our village are in their 60s and 70s, and we all get along just fine. But in a real crisis, if they knew we had all those supplies, it would be hard to avoid resentment. What happens when they run out and ask us to share or want to buy some from us? Do you sell it or not? It's a difficult situation. My dad lit a cigarette and took a few thoughtful drags, nodding in agreement with my mom. I see you've listed a lot of fresh food on here: meat, fish, shrimp. We have one refrigerator in the kitchen, but it's way too small for all of that. We have a spare chest freezer in the garage, but that probably won't be enough either, and it's still hot outside. How about this? When I go into town to buy the heating equipment, I'll pick up 2 more large chest freezers. They're pretty cheap these days. You can get a good one for a few $100. Okay. You two have it all planned out, my mom said with a determined look. In that case, I'll start harvesting all the vegetables from the garden. We don't know how long this will last, and getting enough vitamins is important. I'll also buy some potatoes, sweet potatoes, turnips, and cabbage. Things that store well. We can keep them all in the basement. That should last us for a good long while. With our tasks assigned for the next day, night had fallen. After a simple dinner, the 3 of us went to bed, a shared sense of purpose hanging in the air. The next morning, we all woke up early and started our individual missions. My dad was the first one out of the house. He drove the family's small 3-wheeled utility vehicle to the hardware market in Newtown and pointed at all the different heating units, generators, and solar power systems in the store, ordering 2 or 3 of each. Delivery wasn't included in the price, so after paying, he had to make 3 separate trips back and forth to get everything home. By the time he was finished, the 2 new chest freezers he had bought were already set up in the basement and plugged in, humming quietly as they cooled down. My mom was the second to leave. The vegetables are always freshest in the morning. Even though we live in the countryside where most people grow their own produce, we still have a small farmer's market with a wider variety than any single home garden. But since it was still early in our prepping stage, my mom didn't buy too much at once. She just planned to add a little more to our stock each day to avoid suspicion. As for me, even though I was on the highway by 7 in the morning, I was technically the last one to leave the house. I drove my pickup truck toward Metro City, feeling a little sheepish. It looked like I was the laziest one in the family. At 7:48 a.m., I arrived at the city's wholesale meat market. I bought a large variety of fresh meats, getting about 30 to 50 pounds of each kind. I had to transport all of this myself, so it had to be done during the daylight hours. It took me 2 full days, making 3 to 4 round trips each day. But I finally managed to get all of the fresh meat into our new freezers before any of it could spoil. With the perishable food handled, I rented the warehouse and headed to the bulk food market. Since we were on a tight budget, our goal was clear: stick to common, filling foods that would last. For staples, I bought 20 large bags, each of rice and white flour, with each bag weighing 40 pounds. For seasonings, I bought 20 cases each of cooking oil, salt, and sugar. For instant and canned goods, I focused on things with long shelf lives: dried noodles, ramen, Spam, canned meats, canned fruits, and high-calorie emergency biscuits. I bought 30 cases of each. Then came the indispensable items: paper towels and feminine hygiene products, enough to last our family for over a year. Finally, I addressed our water situation. I bought 10,000 half-liter bottles. That wouldn't be nearly enough for 3 people over a long period, but by then my money was running low. I figured it would be more cost-effective to use the last of the money on large water storage tanks that we could fill while our tap water was still safe, rather than buying more expensive bottled water. Once all the supplies were delivered to the rented warehouse, I began my multi-day mission of secretly hauling everything back to our house in the middle of the night. It wasn't until 3 days before the disaster was set to hit that I finally finished the task. Just as I was congratulating myself for managing to do all of this for so many days without any of the villagers noticing, the 2 huge custom-ordered water tanks my dad had bought were delivered by a work crew. The commotion from the large truck and the crew, even before they started the installation, brought the village head straight to our front door. "What have you all been so busy with lately?" he asked, his expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. There's been noise from your place every night, and we've all seen Sarah bringing things home by the truckload for days. Now you've got these two giant tanks being delivered. His words left our whole family stunned and speechless. My dad quickly recovered and asked, "How did you know about that, sir?" "It's not just me, the whole village knows," the village head replied. "Old folks are light sleepers. You've been quiet at night, but not completely silent. People hear something, they get up and take a look out their window. You're busy all night and sleeping during the day, so nobody has had a chance to ask what's going on. That's why I'm here now." Well, that was awkward. I looked at my dad. My mom looked at my dad. My dad thought for a moment before finally speaking. "Well, sir, I won't hide it from you. My daughter heard a rumor in the city that the weather is about to change drastically, that it's going to get extremely cold. So we're just getting a head start on preparing for winter." The village head didn't seem too surprised. Hot summers often mean cold winters. It's been like that for years now. But it's only the end of August. Isn't this a bit early to be preparing so much? Since my dad had already started the explanation, I decided to chime in. "It's not like that, sir. This cold spell is going to be different from a normal winter. I heard this from someone I know who works for a government agency. It might just be a rumor, but I have a strong feeling it's not fake. If you trust me, I think you should get some extra heating equipment and stock up on food, too." The village head was about to refuse, but then he seemed to think about the sheer scale of our preparations. After a moment's hesitation, he agreed. "All right, we'll need it for winter anyway. It's just a matter of getting it early. How about this, Mr. Chen?" he said to my dad. "I'll ask around the village and see what everyone needs. We can all go buy things together. Your daughter's truck has plenty of space. Would you mind if she made a trip for the village?" "Of course," I replied before my dad could answer. After the village head left, my mom looked worried. "Honey, why did you tell him everything? What if—" "You know what they say in those apocalypse stories? The first people to die are the ones with bleeding hearts. Aren't you being one right now?" "If he hadn't asked, I wouldn't have said a word," my dad replied calmly. "But he came directly to us. It's just a bunch of old folks in this village. It's not like they can cause much trouble. I'd feel guilty for the rest of my life if I just stood by and watched them die. People would blame us. It's better to give them a heads up now. If they don't listen, then it's not on us." My mom and I looked at each other with grim expressions, but what was done was done. It was too late to take it back. I tried to console her. It's the classic story of becoming a target because you have something that others want. If we're the only family in the entire village with a huge stockpile of supplies, we'll become the villains the second the truth gets out. But if every house has something, then, if a problem comes up later, it can't all be blamed on us. I remembered that before I died in my past life, the blizzard had already buried the entire first floor of buildings. Forget the elderly, even young, able-bodied people couldn't get outside. So, as long as everyone makes it through the initial, most intense part of the storm, we shouldn't be blamed for anything. That seemed to calm my mom down a bit, but she still immediately took the three-wheeled utility vehicle to the hardware store and secretly bought several axes, sickles, long poles, and sharp knives just in case. My dad watched her, speechless. "You've been watching too many of those apocalypse shows. People aren't that bad." "But human nature is the first thing to fail when put to the test," she shot back. "Our daughter already died a horrible death once. Do you want to see that happen again?" My dad fell silent, and that was the end of that conversation. For the next 3 days, we were busy helping the other villagers with their supply runs. The old folks were very cooperative. They had lived through hard times in their youth and understood the principle of a full pantry means a calm heart better than we did. Whether they truly believed the rumors of a super blizzard or not, they knew that stocking up on food was never a bad idea. And me? On the night before the world was scheduled to end, I finally had a moment to myself to scroll through my phone. For now, the internet was calm and normal. Watching short, funny videos gave me a brief moment of peace. But soon, a notification popped up. Jessica had tagged me in a video. Ever since her family went abroad on their vacation, Jessica had been posting over 10 videos a day, and she made sure to tag me in every single one. The smugness was practically oozing from the screen. Since I had been too busy to respond to any of her provocations, she seemed to have gotten desperate and had resorted to directly taunting me. "Some people just aren't destined for the good life," her caption read. "Not like me with a husband who takes me on international trips." In the comments section, our mutual friends were a mix of people calling her out for being classless and people who were clearly jealous. But I only focused on one thing. The location tag showed they were back in the country today. I checked the date on my phone carefully, and a question formed in my mind. They're back a day early. Why? Could my rebirth have caused some kind of butterfly effect? If so, what if the disaster doesn't come? But that worry turned out to be unnecessary. The temperature, which had been over 100 degrees during the day, suddenly plummeted in the middle of the night. A fierce, howling wind began to blow, sounding like a stampede of wild horses, making it impossible to sleep. I quickly turned off the air conditioning and went to the window. The blizzard had arrived, right on schedule. The sudden extreme drop in temperature made me shiver uncontrollably. I rushed to change into the thick winter clothes I had prepared, then went to knock on my parents' bedroom door. "Mom, Dad, the temperature's dropping fast. Wake up and put on more layers." The most terrifying thing about this disaster wasn't just the intense cold, but the incredible speed of the temperature drop. It went from over 100 degrees Fahrenheit to nearly 15 below zero in an instant, and it was still falling. Even young, healthy people might not be able to handle a temperature swing of that magnitude, let alone the elderly villagers. My dad came out of his room in a hurry, already pulling on a thick sweater. "I'll go get the village head," he said. "We'll wake up the rest of the seniors together. My God, it's freezing. If you hadn't woken me up, your mother and I would have probably frozen to death in our sleep." "Dad, I'll go with you," I said. "No, it's too cold out there. You stay here." My dad layered up in all his winter gear and rushed over to the village head's house. By the time they managed to wake him up and started trying to rouse the other seniors in the village, the temperature inside the unheated houses had already dropped to 40 below zero. I kept an eye on the snowfall from my window. In just half an hour, the snow was already ankle deep. Feeling anxious, I checked my phone. Rumors about the end of the world were already starting to spread like wildfire online. In that short amount of time, I had already seen several posts about people freezing to death in their homes. My mom was in the kitchen, making hot ginger tea on the stove. She turned to me and said, "Stop looking at that stuff online. It will only make you anxious. Go check on those two from your old life. Maybe they froze to death." "Not a chance," I said, though I was already pulling up the feed from the hidden cameras in the house. The wicked always live long lives. They didn't die last time, so they probably won't die this time either. In the master bedroom, their child, shivering violently, was sobbing. "Daddy, Mommy, I'm so cold. I'm so cold." Jessica was both heartbroken and furious. "That Sarah is such a piece of work. She took every single warm thing out of this house. If it weren't for her, our son wouldn't be freezing like this." Mark readily agreed with her. Ignoring the late hour, he called my phone. "Sarah, have you no shame?" he yelled. "Where are all the thick blankets? Are you trying to freeze us to death?" I calmly stirred some brown sugar into the pot of ginger tea and chuckled. "The thick blankets? Those were mine to begin with. Of course I took them with me when we got divorced. What, did you think I'd let Jessica sleep with my husband and use my blankets? Do you take me for a total idiot?" "But you took all the winter clothes. What are we supposed to wear?" "What you wear has absolutely nothing to do with me," I said coolly. "If you don't have clothes, I guess you'll just have to freeze." After that parting shot, I hung up the phone and switched it to airplane mode. When I looked at the monitor again, Mark was so enraged by my words that he had thrown his phone across the room, shattering it against the wall. Jessica was frantically trying to turn up the heat with the remote control, but it was already 50 below zero outside. What good was a standard residential HVAC unit in this kind of extreme cold? "Mark, when it gets light out, let's go buy some warm clothes," she said, her teeth chattering. "And food. There's nothing to eat in the house. Everyone's probably going to be hoarding supplies. If we wait too long, we'll starve." Mark shot her an angry glare. You go if you want to. There isn't a single warm piece of clothing in this entire house. How are you going to get out there? Besides, we have money. We can just pay a delivery service to bring everything to us. As soon as dawn broke, Mark, still completely oblivious to the severity of the situation, actually started ordering groceries and clothing from a delivery app. But because of the extreme weather conditions, no drivers were taking orders. Finally, after he raised the delivery fee to an absurd $30,000, a driver finally accepted the job half an hour later. Due to the treacherous weather, the delivery was still delayed by 3 hours before their things finally arrived. When he saw the delivery driver at the door, Mark snapped, "You're way too slow. I'm definitely leaving you a 1-star review." He didn't even give the driver a chance to respond before slamming the door in his face. I pursed my lips and turned off the monitor. At a time like this, he's lucky anyone took his order at all, and he's still expecting on-time delivery. But that driver, he looks familiar. Shaking off the thought, I turned away from the screen just as my dad came back home, completely covered in a thick layer of snow. "Dad, how are the village elders?" I asked, rushing to help him with his coat. My dad went straight to the coal stove to warm his frozen hands. After a long moment, he finally spoke. The village head, me and 2 of the younger guys from the village went door to door all night. It's a good thing we started early. A lot of the seniors had passed out from the cold, but thankfully everyone is okay now. We got their stoves going and gave them some hot water and made them some ginger tea. After that, it's in God's hands. My mom handed my dad a bowl of the hot ginger tea she'd made, then turned to me. "Sarah, this storm isn't normal. Is it just going to keep snowing like this forever?" "If I remember correctly from last time," I said, "the snow should lighten up tomorrow. It'll get to about mid-calf deep and then stop for a day. But after that day of calm, an even bigger blizzard will hit. When I died, the snow was about 1.5 stories high. You couldn't walk outside at all." My parents looked sad when I mentioned my death. My dad, after finishing his tea, asked, "Will there be any other dangers during that time?" I thought for a moment. It's mainly about food and heat. There's nothing inherently wrong with the snow itself. As long as everyone stays in their homes, they should be fine. Hearing that, my dad finally let out a sigh of relief. We had plenty of food, but since it was still possible to walk outside, we didn't want anyone to see us eating too well. So for breakfast, we had simple tomato and egg noodles. I had just finished my bowl and was about to get some more ginger tea when the village head arrived, pushing his way through the deep snow. "Mr. Chen, are you home?" It was his voice. "I'm here," my dad called back. I hurried to open the door and let him in. "Be careful, Sarah. It's slippery out there." "I will." As soon as he was inside, the village head shook the snow off his coat and stood by the stove for a while before speaking. "Chen, I really owe you one this time. If your daughter hadn't woken you and you hadn't come to my house to wake me, my whole family might have frozen to death. And all the seniors in the village. Anyway, thank you." "It's nothing, we're all neighbors. I couldn't just stand by and watch people die. Besides, it was my daughter who was up all night and noticed the temperature drop. Otherwise, my wife and I probably would have passed out too." At the mention of me, the village head asked with a hint of suspicion, "Sarah, I remember your dad saying you heard a rumor in the city that the weather was going to change?" "Yes, like I said before, it was a rumor I heard from someone who works at a government agency. That's why I rushed back to have my parents stock up, and I figured I should warn the village too." I quickly added, "It's not that I didn't want everyone to stock up more beforehand. It's just that, it hadn't happened yet. Even my own parents took a few days to fully believe me." The village head asked me seriously, "So what's next? How long do you think this blizzard will last?" "Thanks to your warning, everyone has some supplies, but not a lot. If this goes on for too long, I'm afraid people won't make it." I really don't know for sure. But if you ask me, while the roads are still somewhat visible, we should get out there and stock up on more supplies. Food is more important than anything else right now. The village head stood by the stove, hesitating for a long time before finally making a decision. "Chen, can I trouble you to go out with me? I'll have my son drive one car, you can drive another, and I'll borrow a third from a neighbor. We need to go to the nearby towns and buy as much food as we possibly can. For heat, if people run out of coal, they can at least burn wood from their furniture. But we can't run out of food. Since I had already mentioned that the storm would let up for a bit, my dad wasn't worried and agreed on the spot. You got it. As they were about to leave, I quickly added, you can't just drive out like that. The roads are too icy. I have some tire chains in the garage. It'll be much safer if you put those on first. Also, Dad, can you bring back a couple of gas cans? If we end up having to burn wood, gasoline will help get the fires started. Good idea. The cars need gas anyway. After watching my dad leave with the village head, my mom and I sat in the living room, warming ourselves by the fire and prepping some of the fresh vegetables we had bought. My mom sighed regretfully. We still bought too much of this fresh stuff. There's no way we can eat all of this before it goes bad. I'm just worried we'll have to throw it out. What a waste. It won't be a waste, I said. We can keep some of it fresh for now, and we can pickle the rest. We've got plenty of salt. Pickled vegetables will be great with porridge. My mom thought about it for a second. That could work. The cabbage and bok choy can be pickled. The eggplant and lotus root? Let's fry them. Fried vegetables last longer. In this cold, we can just leave them outside to freeze. Oh, and I can make some dough. We can use the cabbage to make dumplings. I knew their supply run would take a while, but I didn't expect them to be gone until after the snow had completely stopped falling for the day. The one good thing was that all 3 vehicles came back packed to the brim with supplies. They had even tied bags of food to the roofs with rope. Before I could even get a good look at everything they brought, my dad came inside like he was presenting a prize, carrying several large boxes of fresh cherries. Sarah loves these, he said, beaming. They're usually too expensive, so we only get them as a special treat. But with the cold snap, nobody's buying fresh fruit, so the market was having a huge sale. Guess how much a box was? $30. I bought 5 boxes. My mom chided him gently. Those don't keep well, and you can't eat too many in one day. They're all gonna spoil. They won't spoil, my dad said. We can make jam, right? Besides, Sarah likes frozen fruit. We can pit them, freeze them solid, and she can eat them like little popsicles. My eyes suddenly felt hot. I blinked hard, managing to hold back the tears. The brief pause in the storm was humanity's last chance to catch its breath. Everyone took the opportunity to shovel the snow in front of their homes. The village head did his best to distribute the newly acquired food to every household. By the time it was all done, another day had passed. Lying in bed that night, I curiously opened the camera feed on my phone to see how Mark and Jessica were doing. I never would have expected what I saw. The kitchen and living room were a complete mess, and the 3 of them, after changing into the new warm clothes the delivery guy had brought, were just lying in bed again. Whether they had eaten or not, it was clear that those 2 had no intention of going out to stock up on supplies. The days ahead were going to be very rough for them. But if things were rough for them, I was perfectly happy. Outside my window, the howling wind returned with a vengeance. Listening to its sharp, demonic shriek, I pulled the covers over my head and fell into a peaceful sleep. And when I woke up the next morning, the blizzard had indeed returned with full force after its short break. Overnight, the snow that we had just cleared from our paths was already up to our knees. While it was still possible to get out, the village head made an announcement over the broadcast system every half hour, telling everyone to stay inside and to contact him if they needed anything. But being stuck at home is always boring. When my mom called me down for lunch, I opened up the camera feed from Mark's place again. One glance was enough to make my blood run cold. Jessica had been hit in the head and was bleeding profusely from a deep gash. She was clinging to Mark's legs, screaming and crying. And Mark, he was standing over a large pot on the stove, stirring its contents with a spatula. In that pot, a small child was boiling. The child's eyes were bloodshot and wide open, fixed in an eternal, horrifying stare. Looking closely at the child's face, I realized with a jolt of nausea that it was their son, Leo. Ugh! I couldn't hold it back. I ran to the back door and started gagging. My parents saw my reaction and rushed over. Honey, what's wrong? My mom sensed something was terribly off and picked up my phone to look at the screen. I couldn't stop her in time. A second later, she was right next to me, throwing up into the snow. My dad was completely confused. What is wrong with you 2? When he reached for the phone, I cried out, "Don't look!" But it was too late. The 3 of us stood there in the cold, retching together. My mom, after catching her breath, said with utter disgust, "That man, he's not human. Whose child is that? It's only been a few days and he's already catching children to cook them? With that kind of effort, couldn't he have just gone out to buy some food?" "That's his own son," I said, my voice hollow. "You might not be able to tell clearly from the video, but I'm sure of it. That's his son." Even my dad, a man not easily shocked, couldn't help but say, "That's just monstrous. The man is a monster." "If he could do what he did to me in my last life," I explained quietly, "it's no surprise he'd do it again now that he has no supplies." But I never thought the first person he'd turn on would be his own child. Listening to my calm analysis, my mom's eyes suddenly turned red with tears. "My baby. Is that what happened to you?" "Mom, it's over. I'm back now, aren't I? Once this storm passes, I'll send the video to the police. He's going to prison, and for a crime like this, he's never getting out." The video was so disturbing that none of us could bring ourselves to eat any meat for the next 2 days. A 3-year-old child isn't something you can finish in a day or two. On the 4th day, I had my mom cook a big pot of savory pork ribs. Not only did I enjoy a great meal, but I also took a picture and sent it to Mark just to provoke him. Of course, my phone was still on airplane mode, and I was logged out of every social media app he could use to contact me. Unable to find a target for his rage, Mark turned on Jessica. After beating her senseless, he leaned in and whispered something in her ear. With a look of complete disbelief on her face, she was thrown out of the house into the blizzard. I was confused. "What's this? This didn't happen last time." Then it hit me. Last time, I was the one being eaten. I was already dead. How would I know what happened next? An hour later, Jessica returned, looking even more disheveled than before. Her down jacket had several new rips in it, and her eyes and mouth were badly bruised. She looked at Mark with pure resentment, then pulled out 2 small packs of instant ramen from inside her coat. Now this is interesting. Where did she get ramen?" "The mom's group. That's it." After thinking it over for a moment, I logged into a messaging app I hadn't used in ages. Ignoring the dozens of unread messages from my friends, I found the Neighborhood Moms group chat. It was a private group for the women who lived in our apartment complex, mostly used for gossip, complaining about their in-laws, and organizing group buys. It was always active, and it was my best source for first-hand information about what was happening back in the city. Scrolling through the chat history, I found what I was looking for. What are they doing? They've already looted almost every apartment in buildings 1, 2, and 3. Isn't that enough food for them? Are they going to keep going? Haven't you noticed? They're going in order. They're probably going to clear out the entire complex before they stop. This is insane. Just because they're alive, everyone else has to die? We have to call the police. Someone did. The cops came and the looters ran. The second the cops left, they came right back. And somehow, they found out who called the police and killed that whole family. I frowned and kept scrolling. About an hour ago, I found this message. "Oh God, they're in building 8 now. I hid some food in my apartment. I hope they don't find it." But I bet I'm not the only one. Let's hope. I hid some too. I pray they don't find it. It's useless. They found the food I hid in the bathroom ceiling. These guys aren't human. They have knives, axes, and I think I even saw a gun. I don't know if the gun is real. "Building 8, I muttered to myself. I closed the app and immediately switched back to my security camera feed. My old apartment is in Building 8. There's no food there. Are these guys going to let Mark go when they find nothing? If not, well, don't blame me if I can't help but laugh. Sure enough, after just half an hour, a group of people knocked loudly on Mark's door. When the door opened, the face of the leader was familiar. Thinking back, I realized it was the delivery driver from the other day. Mark obviously recognized him too. He pointed at the man, his face a mask of disbelief. Without a word of hesitation, the man swung the large blade he was holding and chopped off Mark's right hand at the wrist. "Ah!" I screamed in my head, along with the real scream from Linda in the video. Mark collapsed in pain, clutching his severed arm and scrambling backward, mumbling what sounded like pleas for mercy. I cranked up the volume on the feed. "Let me go," he was saying. "Please, let me go." The leader asked him, Why should I? I remember your apartment. You don't have any food. Why should I let you live? I I can work for you. Money. I have money. I can give you all my money. The leader sneered. It's the damn apocalypse. What the hell am I going to do with money? I need food. If you have some, you live. If you don't blame me for what happens next. Suddenly, Jessica threw herself at the leader's feet. She hugged his legs and begged, "Save me! Kill him! Kill him!" The man found this amusing and laughed. "You want me to kill him? Why? He killed my son because he had no food, and he ate him." The leader and the men behind him all sucked in a sharp breath. They stared in disbelief. A guy in the back said, "The world just ended. We're not at the eating people stage yet. If you're not afraid to die, you can still go out and buy stuff." He didn't mention that you'd probably get robbed on the way. But when Mark heard Jessica's accusation, he roared back, "Like you didn't eat him too. You ate just as much as I did. Now that the meat's all gone, you're crying over a pile of bones? You're disgusting." The leader hadn't expected to walk into such a grotesque scene just from looking for food. He looked at Mark again. "You really do have the face of a heartless bastard. And this woman, she's not your wife, is she?" Mark and Jessica both froze. No, she's not. Do you know my ex-wife?" "Ex-wife?" The leader's voice dripped with sarcasm. "You think I'm stupid. Where is she? Don't tell me you killed her too." "We're divorced." "Really? I don't know where she is. She took everything from the house. If she hadn't, we wouldn't have ended up like this." "Ending up like this is your own damn fault. What's it got to do with anyone else? You're divorced, so she should be dead to you." "No, wait. It would be better if she were actually dead." Mark shrank back until his back hit the coffee table with nowhere left to go. "No, you can't kill people." "We don't kill people," the leader said. "We never kill people." He gave a signal to his men. A few of them stepped forward and beat Mark and Jessica brutally, breaking both of their legs before leaving. Watching the two of them lying on the floor wailing, I was lost in thought again. Who is that guy? He's so familiar, but I just can't place him. Ding. A message popped up on my phone. "Hey, I just stopped by your old place. Did you get divorced? Where are you now? Do you have a place to stay?" Looking at the familiar chat history, I finally remembered who he was. This young man had been in a terrible accident while working as a delivery driver, and I had passed by and saved him. It was a bad crash. His intestines were literally spilling out of his abdomen, and I was the one who pushed them back in and held pressure until the ambulance arrived. We had added each other on a messaging app after that, but we never really talked. We'd just nod at each other if we happened to run into each other on his delivery routes. So, was he getting revenge for me now? It probably wasn't entirely for me, but no matter the reason, I was grateful for what he did to Mark and Jessica. Yeah, we split up. I'm back at my parents' place. Why were you at my apartment? Just passing by. Sis, you've got food, right? The weather's really bad. Try not to go out. I do. You be safe too. I closed the chat and went back to the camera feed. In the short time I was texting, Linda, despite her broken legs, had managed to crawl to the kitchen, fill a pot with water, and had started boiling Mark's severed hand. "You rotten bitch! Get that out of there! I need to get it reattached!" Mark screamed. Linda gave him a vicious, crazed smile. "You should worry about staying alive first." The wicked were getting what they deserved. I lost interest and put down my phone. The blizzard continued for several more days, and the first floor of our house was completely buried in snow. The village head's broadcast came several times a day, reminding everyone to stay warm and conserve fuel. He even made it a point to call every senior in the village at set times each day to make sure they were still alive. I had to admit, in a time like this, to still be so worried about others, the village head was a truly good man. A few more days passed. By the time the snow reached the second floor windows, the outside temperature had been holding steady at over 50 degrees below zero for a while. In that kind of weather, even with a stove going inside, it was still unbearably cold. But luckily, every household was well stocked. With a stove in the room, an electric blanket on the bed, extra thick pajamas, and several heavy blankets, it was manageable. That's how it is in the South. You can't build heated brick beds like they do up north, so you just have to tough it out. But just when we thought things couldn't get any harder, the water and electricity suddenly went out. We were all completely cut off from the outside world. The only comfort was the village head's 3 daily phone calls. After another 3 days, his calls stopped too. We knew his old-fashioned phone must have finally run out of battery. My dad actually joked about it. That's because he uses one of those old-school phones for seniors. The battery can last for 3 days. A smartphone would have been dead on day 1. My mom asked worriedly, "The snow is already up to the 2nd floor. Can this little house hold up under all that weight?" "We just have to go up and shovel the roof every day," my dad said. "As long as the snow doesn't get too thick and heavy up there, it'll be fine." 5 more days passed like this. When the blizzard finally reached the 3rd floor, it started to taper off. At the same time, the water and power miraculously came back on. A few moments later, a loudspeaker started broadcasting a message from outside. I hurried to the 3rd floor roof deck with my binoculars. It was a large drone carrying a speaker, playing a recorded message on a loop. "Attention residents. The disaster is not over, but the situation is improving. Due to extreme conditions, travel is impossible. We urge all residents to practice self-rescue. We will also be airdropping supplies to various locations to provide immediate relief. Please believe that the government will not abandon any of its citizens. Please hold on. Dawn is coming." The government's words of encouragement were always the most effective. Knowing that the people in charge hadn't forgotten us, we could finally breathe a little easier. The days didn't seem quite so hard to bear anymore. I could even munch on snacks while binge-watching my favorite drama, The Legend of Gen Huan, to pass the time. When I got tired of the show, I'd take out my binoculars and scan the vast white horizon for any signs of supply drops. I never thought that this idle habit of mine would end up saving our entire village. One afternoon, I put down my binoculars and rushed inside to get my dad. I pointed him in the right direction and handed him the binoculars. "See, they're coming toward us, right? I think those are the troublemakers from the next village over. Coming here at a time like this, they must be here to steal our supplies. To risk going out in this weather, I can't think of any other reason," my dad agreed. He immediately called the village head. Without even hanging up the phone, the village head heard what was happening and went straight to his own rooftop to look. Sure enough, in the distance, a group of 4 men were using long wooden planks to slowly make their way across the deep snow toward our village. My dad said into the phone, "Sir, this is the first group. We have to scare them off properly. If word gets out that we're an easy target, we'll have endless streams of people coming here." "I know, but we can't get out there to confront them either. What do we do?" I thought for a moment and said, "Sir, use the broadcast system. Scare them. Have your son download a gunshot sound effect on his phone and play it loudly through the speakers. If they think we have guns, they won't dare to do anything." "But we don't have guns. What if they want our guns and decide to attack us instead?" "Then someone's going to have to bleed," my dad said grimly. "What's the alternative? Handing our lives and our supplies over to them?" The village head considered this for a moment and made his decision. His voice soon boomed over the village speakers. "Hello, hello. The 4 men on the planks on the east side of the village. Yes, I'm talking to you 4. Do not move any closer. Turn back immediately. Otherwise, in these extraordinary times, don't blame us for not being polite." The distance was too great for the village head to see their reaction, but my dad and I were watching them closely through the binoculars. The 4 men hesitated for a moment, then continued to move forward. My dad immediately reported back to the village head. "They're still coming." The village head's voice boomed over the broadcast system again. "You little bastards, are you looking to die? Get back now!" But the 4 men seemed to be provoked by the threat and started moving even faster. Finally, a loud bang echoed through the still, cold air. Everyone froze. "I'll say it one last time," the village head's voice said, now lower and more menacing. "Go back. My aim isn't great and I can't hit you from this far. But if you get any closer, I can't guarantee anything." Sure enough, fear made the men retreat. The broadcast ended. The 4 men were gone. I couldn't help but laugh. The village head is pretty good at bluffing, but after an incident like that, no one could afford to be complacent about safety. A rotating watch was immediately established to protect the village. Maybe it was because the days were so long and boring, but I found myself thinking about Mark again. I had assumed that after all this time, both of them would be dead. But to my surprise, when I checked the cameras, he was still alive. Of course, it was only Mark. Jessica was now in his cooking pot. I shook my head in disgust. It's true what they say about the wicked living long lives. The man has a strong will to live. With only one winter coat, he had managed to survive at 50 below. A malicious smile spread across my face. I decided to add some fuel to the fire. I unblocked his number and sent him pictures of every meal I had eaten over the past few weeks, all at once. The next second, a video call from Mark popped up on my screen. "Sarah, where are you? Why do you still have food?" he cried. I replied calmly, "Why wouldn't I have food? You know I've always liked to stock up." "Where are you now? I'm starving to death. Can you come and get me?" I smiled at him, my voice firm and clear. "No." After a 3-second pause, Kevin asked, "Sarah, you knew I was cheating all along, didn't you?" "No," I said truthfully. One was my husband, the other my best friend. My natural trust in them meant that, before that disastrous vacation, I truly had no idea they were together. It wasn't until they moved into my home and feasted on my body that my hatred reached its peak. Maybe that's why I was given a second chance. I walked through the house with my phone, the video call still active, all the way to the kitchen. My mom was cooking. One pot was stewing pork knuckles, and another was pan-frying cabbage dumplings. On the counter next to the stove sat 2 freshly cooked vegetable dishes. Because the extreme cold kept things from spoiling, my mom would cook a huge batch of food at once, enough for our family to eat for 2 or 3 days. The meals were simple, but they were a world away from what Mark had. The sight of it was enough to make him lose his mind completely. "Sarah, save me! Are you at your family's house? Please, come save me. I'm going to starve." Mark was sobbing now. "I'm begging you. I'll never cheat again. I'll be a good husband to you from now on, okay?" "A good husband? After this disaster is over, who knows where you'll be? Do you even have a life left to live?" Delusional, but I wasn't angry. After showing off all our food, I mocked him to his face. "In your dreams." I hung up and opened the camera feed again. It seemed I had really pushed him over the edge. He knocked over the pot he was cooking with, but it tipped back and splashed its foul contents all over him. To vent his rage, he smashed things around the house for a while before picking up the kitchen knife and hacking away at what was left of Jessica's body. He hacked at it until the area was almost unrecognizable. Then, the knife slipped from his hand, flew up to the ceiling, bounced off, and came straight down, embedding itself deep in his shoulder. Yikes, even I sucked in a breath at that. But as for the person on the other side of the screen, I wasn't interested anymore. This evidence is more than enough to put you away for good. Whether you live or die now is up to you. Before dinner that night, I told my parents the news. They were happy for me. "He might not be dead yet," my dad said, "but with all the evil things he's done, his life from now on will be worse than death. He'll be in prison forever. He can never wash away his sins." "Of course," my mom added. "If he does die before then, I guess you could say he got lucky." With Mark no longer on my mind, I focused all my attention on the disaster. It had been 2 months since it started. That was a long time. Long enough that even with our stockpiles, people were starting to run low on certain things. We copied the 4 troublemakers from the other village and used wooden planks to slide across the snow, delivering the government's airdrop supplies to every house. At a time like this, the villagers had to stick together to survive. As if the heavens had finally opened their eyes, the heavy snowfall from the day before began to lessen. It got lighter and lighter, and after 2 more days, it miraculously stopped altogether. Without the constant blizzard, the government airdrops became more frequent and reliable. But to everyone's surprise, the temperature continued to fall, reaching an astonishing 70 degrees below zero. We live in the South. The coldest it usually gets here is around 20 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature more than 10 times colder than that. I can't even imagine how people in the densely populated cities, without the resources and community we had in the countryside, were surviving. Another week passed like this. The thick fog in the air began to clear, the dark, oppressive clouds scattered, and the sun finally showed its face for the first time in months. The temperature started to rise. The nightmare we had been living through seemed to be heading in the right direction overnight. When the temperature climbed back up to 4 degrees below zero, the younger villagers, organized by the village head, started the massive task of shoveling snow. It wasn't a government order, it was just so the paths would be clear so neighbors could visit each other again. The incredible thing was, after nearly 3 months of unimaginable hardship, during which countless people outside our small community had died, not a single person in our village was lost. When the government rescue teams finally arrived, they were shocked to hear this. After learning what the villagers had done to help each other during that time, they gave special commendations to the village head and my dad. After that, society slowly began to return to normal and people's lives got back on track. Once the main roads were fully cleared, I drove back to my old home and asked around the neighborhood to find out what had happened to Mark. He hadn't died. Because he was wearing a thick winter coat, the knife hadn't gone very deep into his shoulder. But he had been too scared to pull it out, so he had lived with it stuck in his shoulder for a long time. When travel resumed, the police, who had received my anonymous report along with the video evidence long ago, arrested him immediately. I went straight to the police station and gave them the login information for the hidden cameras I had installed. Now there was truly no escape for Mark. Because we hadn't finalized our divorce within the mandatory 30-day period, the legal proceedings were automatically voided. As his legal wife, I inherited the remaining $7 million plus interest of his lottery winnings. After handling all the legal matters, I returned to my family home in the countryside. This life, all I want is to be with my parents and live out the rest of my days in peace.